Hi, I'm Deborah Birnbaum. Wow, that's odd. Variety's executive editor of TV. How you guys doing? What'd you think? It's fantastic, isn't it? So let's bring out the man of the hour, John Rothman, the star of One Mississippi. How you doing?
Great. Good to see that again. A lot of good memories.
So more importantly, what did you think of the episode?
Oh, I think it's very good.
Compliment your own work.
And it's very interesting that we're in the middle of this, we're starting the 4th episode of the 2nd season, and the way I guess they hope that the way the seeds that are dropped, just to give you an example, when he drives by the church and that look in Remy's face when he sees the church and that whatever is written there, that's now a whole more than an episode. I mean, it's a whole theme and an arc. It's his return to the church and the family's relationship with the church, and all of that is like developed in this next season. And the molestation theme, which you see in The Cemetery, is also something that's really fully developed and explored going forward. So there's all this. I mean, that was the last episode of the 1st season, and it's very funny, these short 6, because I think when you put it, now we're doing another 6, and when you put it together, it's going to be 12. It'll all go together. Anyway,
it's like chapters in a book.
Chapters in a book.
So take me back to the beginning. How did you get cast? What was it about this role that made you say, I want to sign on for this?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me this. This is a good thing for actors. I mean, a good lesson for us all. When the agent called me and said, well, have you ever heard of Tig Notaro? First he said, I happened to have been sick a couple of days before and home and looking through the possibilities of what I could watch. And my children, I have a 31-year-old and a 28-year-old. I'd heard of Tig, but I had no idea who she was really. And I looked at the documentary. I just happened to have seen it and thought it was, amazing. And so I said, yeah, I know who she is. Then they sent me the breakdown and said, you have to put yourself on tape. I was in New York. Put yourself on tape for this on Monday. And the breakdown said he was a guy with a temperament between room temperature and sleet. There's a line in the 1st season, is that the first joke you ever told? I mean, a totally humorous, and then, I don't know if you know, because I then investigated in the Moth Radio Hour. So he does an entire Moth Radio Hour on her father and his very difficult childhood with him. Anyway, I have a lot of my friends here. I'm nothing like, really. And I thought,
Your room temperature
the agent is crazy. I mean, that agent actually was an agent in LA who sent it to me. He doesn't know me. He knows that I'm 60-something, so that's what it said. So he submitted me. But, I am so wrong for this. I just can't tell you how bad an idea this is. But it said series regular, which of course, that didn't happen every day. And my wife said, it's called acting. You have to figure out how to act this part. And that was actually, the challenge of a weekend. And in that little documentary, Tig's father, Rick, appears in that documentary for a minute, and he's wearing those glasses. I mean, I did a screenshot of him. I went to the optometrist, who happens to be my son's girlfriend's father, who has a shop around the corner. I said, Mike, can you get me these glasses? He said, yeah. And he gave me the glasses, and that was like that was the beginning, and I worked on it over the weekend to sort of develop Actually, I'd taken a mask workshop a couple weeks before, and that kind of work was, like looking at myself in the glasses and trying to sort of figure out a character, which I then did in the tape and sent, and they said, responded very positively. And then I had a meeting with Tig in New York, and my son, who happens to be a manager, said, suggested that I go in character, that I do the sort of Daniel Day-Lewis thing, which I never do. I never do it, and I did it. I did that. I went totally, and I rehearsed exactly how Bill would meet Tig, would talk to Tig, and the sort of level of discomfort of Bill, and how Bill sat. And Mr. C.K., it's nice to meet you. And, I did this whole thing, and it worked. I tricked them. And when I went to do the pilot in Orleans, my son's advice to me was, Dad, don't make any friends. But, now they sort of know that it's not me. I'm not him, but it's very interesting because you understand the problem is I'm playing that is her stepfather, and she's writing it. And she has a very, no, Bill would not do that. Rick. That I just hate to tell you that, she would say there was like something that came up like last week where there was a turn of phrase, and she said, no, Rick would never say that. He would say this. And so it has to be, it's something, I thought about meeting him. I'm giving you, my wife's advice to me tonight is answer short answers so they can ask a lot of questions. You can see this is not exactly a short answer. Okay, did I answer your question?
You're good.
Ask another one.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions, the challenges of playing someone who's real when you're working with the showrunner who's writing that character, who's living this character.
Yeah, it's intense. I have to say that the second season is a lot more fun because I've kind of, they've bought it and they kind of trust it. So I feel a little freer but it's still, it's the more I kind of live in his skin and I'm now finding that there's a lot to be said for compulsion, for obsessive compulsion disorder. For the order in your life, and that everything is going to be, that all your counters are going to be absolutely clean and everything is going to be done perfectly and right and the world is going to follow these rules. And there's something very, very compelling about it. I had a great acting teacher named Ron Van Loo, who one of his secret things is actors should have impossible objectives. The impossible objective that the world is going to be ordered, that it's going to make sense. So you take that in. Yes, it's going to be exact. It's going to be the way I imagine it, and then it isn't, and then you deal with that. But
how do you also make him, because you do this great job of also making him likable, or not making him the sort of, not villain of the story is too strong a word, but making him human.
No, I think the very smart casting, I have to say that, I think I tricked them, but really not. They were smart in that they could have cast somebody who really had the temperament between room temperature and sleet. There are actors out there that do, but by casting me and putting that lid on everything, which is the great fun of doing this character, but it comes out anyway. The real feelings that are going on inside, even though I'm trying not to show you that I'm having any feelings, it's still I am. So anyway, I think that's, they were smart casting against type, really.
You started to say that you were just debating whether or not you wanted to meet the real Bill. Did you ultimately meet him?
No, I decided it really wouldn't be helpful. Wouldn't be a good idea.
Why not?
Well, I don't know. I think it would just be disturbing in a way. I don't know. He lives in Texas. I would have to fly there on my own dime. I could say, if he wants to come and meet me, I'll say, okay. No, but it's interesting. I was in a movie called United 93. It's a great movie if you haven't seen. And we're all real characters. And they were, available. Some of the actors met the families of the people who died, and it completely fucked him up. I mean, it was so hard already to do that. And sort of the choice of not meeting my character's children and family until after I did the opening night of that thing. But,
Was it important to you to be able to relate to him at all? Did you find a way into him?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I actually, yes, of course, to find a way in and to make him mine and to enjoy, yes. But I said that's sort of it, that I find his desires to have everything ordered. And I have to say, he had an influence on me. And my wife is hoping that influence continues to how he loads the dishwasher and how he, one day I was actually putting the coffee cups back in the shelf, and I was just enjoying lining them up and with a thing, and I had the white ones and the red ones, and I thought, oh my God, that's Bill. I'm doing it. Anyway.
Talk about working with Tig. What is she like as a writer, a creator, a scene partner?
Brilliant. You can see the Tig that you see on the screen is really the woman that I work with, and her wit is extraordinary. I mean, that moment of, well, you're not very good at hugs, but you practice that, or whatever she's continually that kind of thing. I don't even know what it's called, but she's extremely witty, and she always keeps you a little off balance. And she has a kind of innate honesty or sense of truth in a moment that, working with her as an actor, you really, it's great. I mean, you know that what you're going for is a real thing, and she's very authentic and real and present, and I love her. It's great working with like brilliant people. I mean, I have to say the directors, this whole operation is like so good, so classy, and it's interesting. It's very much a woman. I mean, our showrunners is a woman, Kate Robin, who is fantastic and is on the set every day. This was directed by Shira Piven, who's Jeremy Piven's sister, and who comes out of a family of actors. Her parents are acting teachers in Chicago, and she's like really understands actors. The kid who plays this is a great story. My publicist told me I could tell, this was a good audience to tell acting stories. Do you mind? I mean, okay. So that kid who was the porter, whatever he is, what's his name? What? No, what's his name? The Filipino kid, Ding Dong or whatever his name is. They hadn't given him his side. Some idiot I said how great these people were, but somebody in production just didn't think to give this kid his sides. And you go in the trailer in the morning and he's sitting there looking at 3 pages of dialogue, which he has never seen before. And the scene is like the next scene up. And, I freak out. I mean, I think and I go to the director and say, he doesn't know his lines. He's just seeing this scene. And anyway. But she, fortunately, comes from this acting. That kid was extremely lucky that this was a director, because she was very patient with him. This was the last show of the season. They were freaking out. The budget was way over budget, of course. They were trying to get finished and move on, and which normally didn't happen. I mean, this was it was fine, but that was the last hurrah of that season. And this kid, and she worked with him, and and she said, the fact that you're looking for the line and you don't know what to say, well, that's good, because that's what's going on in the scene. He doesn't really, she made it work, and, it kind of worked. It was terrifying, but, no, because he was so scared. It was a horrible thing to do to an actor, But I have to say to all of us in this situation, if you don't get the script, if they haven't given it to you, if you got the job and and for some reason you haven't, call your agent, get that script before you show up. And it's just some, if you're not on the call, however it happens, it does happen. And, they're perfectly willing to give it to you when you ask them. It's just like, don't they realize how crazy it is not to give it to you? Yes.
Was there a scene that was particularly challenging for you?
In that episode?
No, in the first season.
Oh, in the first season. Oh, yeah. Well, I was in the 5th show of the season. There's actually a very difficult scene where she confronts me with the fact that I am not acknowledging what happened to her, which is that she was abused by my father. I mean, this season. It was hidden last season. It wasn't for whatever reason, and they say they were like legal reasons and whatever. It was never clear what had happened to her. I mean, I actually had to ask them. Was it her biological father's father? Was it her, who actually? And now, but this season, the story, so I guess I can say it. I mean, it comes out, and it was my father who molested her from the age of 2. And when she was 15 and told her parents, they did believe her. She left home. She went to live with her father. This is the real thing. And, but Bill's inability or unwillingness to acknowledge, he keeps saying, well, that was in the past. That was 30 years ago. I mean, the guy's dead, move on. And she's not ready to move on until there's a very different, till Bill has a very different understanding of it. But that scene there's a scene in the 5th episode before this where she confronts him, and he says, "Get the hell out of my house," basically. I mean, he loses it. And I have to say, I adore her. She's not really she isn't an actress in a way. I mean, she has this great personality and she plays herself. But this was a scene that demanded this demanded that she kind of dig in and it was an acting scene. It was and she came up with it beautifully. But it was challenging, scary, and ultimately quite, it worked.
What's your process like on the set of the show? Did you rehearse? Did you, or did you just come on the set and do your lines?
I have to say, talking about that Daniel Day-Lewis thing, I mean, I actually found in the first season, I mean, I would pretty much stay pretty close to the character. I would be dressed like the character. I would stay. And then Tig, my relationship with Tig, and it's not that easy. There's a level of discomfort between us, and that's good. That I don't, I think that's helpful to the work when I have to go in. But I have to say that, I have the scripts in advance, and I do a lot of work on them before I go, and I think about how possible ways of doing it, and then you go in, and whatever happens on the day. But I prepare a lot, and I actually, try to learn. I mean, I have my line coach is actually sitting here right in front of me.
I'm just going to comment on the question because John's staying with me right now, and the amount of work he does is really commendable. He works really, really hard, and he works at being an actor all the time. He was just talking about the class. He mentioned some class he took about masks. It's as if I don't know if you remember, but at some point we were all 21 and we were all taking Alexander technique and voice classes and this class and that class.
And I still think I'm 21. Yeah, but Jordan and I, before I go to bed, tomorrow is a big day. I've got like 4 scenes tomorrow. And, I run lines before I go to bed because I find that it helps me remember them in the morning. But, yeah.
Is that process different? You said you stayed in character. Is that process different for this show because of the way this character is?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, it is a different. Yes, yes. I mean, okay. I just did a movie. I went back to New York and saw a movie at the Tribeca Film Festival that I did a couple of summers ago with a movie with Laurie Simmons and called My Art, in which I was, much closer to. I mean, She wrote it's a very indie movie. She sort of wrote it with me in mind. It's very close to me, and I was able to, the more I was able to just relax and be me and bring me, that was the challenge of that. Not to do acting, per se, even though there was, it's a very cute movie, but I didn't have to prepare a character, I had to say, what would I be doing falling in love with a 60-year-old woman and on our first date, that was easy. I mean,
Did you always want to be an actor?
Yeah. I mean, I was into it as a kid, and yeah. I mean, I tried to, when I went to college, I tried to see if there wasn't something else I could do. I tried to sort of give it up, but I couldn't. I, finally sort of went, after like 3 years of staying away, I went back and auditioned for a play, and, I just decided this is what I was meant to do. And I actually thought about, after I went to drama school and quit acting after drama school. I decided couldn't do it. And I studied directing, and I produced a play, but then I actually was at Williamstown and watching the actors work and just said, no, I want to be an actor. And I have been, and aim to continue to be.
And we hope you do as well.
Thank you.
Do you have a favorite role you've played?
I have to say, this is starting to be my favorite role, and especially this season. I did a Shakespeare. If we're including, I've had a lot of good roles, but I did King Simonides and Pericles last season, in a Trevor Nunn production in New York. That was a joy. But, most of I don't know. I love the work, and I love it when I'm doing it. So it's, hard to say. It's all good.
What do you look for in a part?
Well, I played a lot of lawyers and a lot of doctors, and those kind of parts where you could feel like you could do them in your sleep and not interesting, so something that's challenging and different. And one of my most favorite parts actually was Sigourney Weaver's gay roommate in Copycat, and I met John Emile, the director, on that, and he said, well, there are two parts here. There's the FBI guy or the gay roommate. Which one do you want? Not which one do you want, but what do you want to read for? Which one do you think? And I said, give me the gay roommate. And even though the FBI guy was a big part, that was cut. A lot of the gay roommate was cut too, but that was a great part, Sigourney's gay roommate. And yeah, so the thing that's going to be interesting and, get you to go someplace where you haven't been and explore, the idea of fun of acting is, getting to live multiple lives and do things, even though, I've been a lawyer enough times that I feel like I've lived that life. But,
I thought you were going to say you're going to be a lawyer now.
Well, probably, but that's just, it's not, a lawyer could be a great part. It's all about the writing. It's all, they're great lawyer parts. I just don't usually get them. The lawyer defending in the devil's advocate. I'm a lawyer. Actually, that's a funny story. So I don't know if you remember that movie. There was a really good part for a lawyer that Jeff Jones got, but I was close to it, and they went another way, and they said, would you come in for, it's just a weekend, it's not going to disturb your busy schedule, but you could come in with with what his name, who directed that movie, the husband of Helen Mirren, what's his name? Taylor Hackford, thank you. Just come in for the weekend. We're going to be in this courtroom, and we're going to do this thing, okay? And we'll pay your day rate. But it was filmed. It turned out anyway. I was so mad. I hadn't really studied the lines until the night before. I got a fax. Remember, a fax with a lot, and it was a speech to the jury. It was great. I mean, it was like a great speech to the jury. It was in the courtroom, 60 Center Street, in the courtroom where the Rosenbergs were tried. I mean, this enormous courtroom on a weekend. I spent the green room, since they didn't have a dressing room, the green room was the judge's chamber where I spent the day playing chess with Keanu Reeves, which is quite fun. But the greatest thing was Al Pacino was in the audience. He has a look to Keanu, who they have a relationship, and I'm just a lawyer trying the case and trying to put Greg Nelson in jail, and he did murder with malice aforethought, and I'm, pacing the jury box, and Al has to watch, and Al, it was a whole day, and Al is just sitting there watching all day long while I'm doing the acting. That was pretty good.
It's a good day.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy auditioning? How do you get through it?
Well, no. I mean, I in a way I wish I didn't have to, but I do for almost everything. It can be really, you can make it a satisfying, but it's so hard because the worst part of it is like, you do this thing, and if you've done something really good and you've worked on it and you've created something and you put it on film or you performed it for people, and then it's nothing until something happens. It's like that skill of being able to sort of, they say, leave it in the room or, walk on and forget about it. But if it's something you really want, and then you just have to walk away and say, and try not to think about it, that's really difficult. So it's a very difficult process. I used to have a thing on my wall from T.S. Eliot. It said, teach us to care and not to care. And it's a really tricky thing. And I've always found it very difficult. Not if you want it and you've done and you've given it your all and you've done. And these days you do the tape, you do it on tape, and I always say send me a copy. I want to see what I did. And then I go home and I watch myself, in that audition. And sometimes I think, Jesus, I'd cast me. I mean, not always. Sometimes I think they'll never, but but then you don't hear anything. Doesn't mean anything necessarily. It's hard. It's that aspect of our acting life is very difficult, and it gets harder. I mean, the idea that there are positive things about doing it on tape. Sending in self-tapes all the time, and that people are looking at it on their phone and just seeing this thing today on this screen, which is like bigger than most people watch this on the plane. On JetBlue, you can watch, Amazon Prime, see, and a little screen like that, and seeing it on even a screen this size is so much better. Yeah.
Is it more painful these days because everything's on tape as opposed to 15 years ago when it was much more personal when you auditioned all the time in front of people? More or less?
Well, I mean, I think it was sort of better when you auditioned for people because you always know actors that, you may not get the part, but if the person responded to you, they may think of you for something else. If you did a great job in that room, and then the casting director calls up your agent and says, wow, he did great, we're not going that way, he would be our first choice, but we're going with our second choice, or any of those. Any of those things, but something has happened, and then the director or somebody calls you for another thing. On a tape, you have no idea what anybody thought, and you can't really get any feedback that means anything. But this is a job I got on a tape, So it doesn't mean that you don't get work that way. You do. And, now more and more. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I just would like to ask, how do you present your tapes? Do you do it as a enthusiastic read, or do you try to do it as okay, that's a wrap on that scene?
Yeah, it's really hard. It's a very good question. And, I think you try to go as far as you can toward a performance on a tape. In this case, there's some tapes for sometimes you can do it at home on your iPhone and it'll look really fine. But I went to a professional, to the tape room in New York to do this because it's run by casting office and they have a very good eye for what various casting directors want. And they light well and it has sort of production values. But I don't think an enthusiastic read is going to get you a job, although you never know. It's so arbitrary.
I just recently did that too. I paid $60 to have a professional do a presentation. Mm-hmm. I got called for part, but I haven't heard.
Yeah. Well, if it's a good place, they won't send it out unless it's good. Unless you've done really, that's my experience. You want to go to some place who's not just going to send it out, but they're going to, work with you until you get something that you and that you agree represents yourself. Because I have to say that the one thing about this is you realize that everybody, there are these apps that let everybody, all the decision makers can look at it pretty much immediately. And they're wherever they are in the country or in the thing, they're looking at your audition, so you really want it to represent you well,
Was there one piece of advice you've gotten throughout your career that's really helped you?
Perseverance furthers. Perseverance furthers. I think it's from the I Ching, somebody told me. But that's it. You got to end. Somebody said to me, it's a life of opportunities. And if you look at it, as long as you're getting opportunities to do it, I don't care if it's a webisode or a Book Pals or whatever, you're doing the opportunity to exercise your craft. Because, it's funny I'm thinking about a lot about the writers, as we were talking about before. The writers, if there would to be a strike, which thank God there isn't. But, writers can go home and write a play. They can go write. We can't, we need somebody to give us a job, or we need to create one. But so it's about making opportunities and not giving up when it's bleak, when they're not coming, because inevitably they do eventually. I'm 67 years old, and this is the best job I ever had, and a job that I thought I was totally wrong for. Going back to what I said before. I read that breakdown. It's, no way, but way. And when you have the chance, I say, I'm really trying to make the most of it, and not, because I know that it is an opportunity that can lead to other opportunities. But if this was 5 more seasons of working with these people, I would be totally happy, because it's the best working, situation you could ask for. Because they're writing a character from, they're kind of writing it for me now. And anyway, it's heaven.
John, can I just say that, because I know John very well for a long, long time, and what I find interesting about you saying that this character wasn't you, mm-hmm. and I know all about the audition, mm-hmm. and I know all about how your wife was working with you on the audition, and since we're in a room full of actors, what I think is interesting is I think you definitely moved to the character. You didn't bring the character to who you are. You couldn't, you wouldn't have gotten the role. But I do think, and I think your director/wife who helped you work on this, knew that there was a part of you,
Right.
a real part of you,
Yeah.
that was useful for the character.
Yeah.
So that it wasn't entirely, so
Absolutely
since
true.
we're in a room of actors,
It's true.
to literally say,
No.
this character wasn't me, I don't think it's true.
Thank you.
I think you accessed the parts of yourself that moved you closer to the character. And I find that fascinating, and what an interesting journey it was.
Thank you for that. I think that's very true. And actually, you just make me think that, because I think that is how I work, how I'm like working on it. When, there's a thing, it's like a joke. My children, when I make dinner for them and it doesn't, and they're not paying attention, they're on their phone and they're not like being grateful. That and what I'm always saying, do you know how expensive this piece of meat was? What are you doing with you? And I get, and that's Bill. That part of me is him. Yeah.
Because I think one of the things that was so great in this episode is when you see yourself, when she comes through the door and her imagined how warm you are. So that's John. That's
Right.
John's natural go-to place.
Yeah.
Right.
So you get to see both
Yeah.
how you move from that to the other. It's sort of wonderful to see in the same episode.
Yeah.
Well, that gets to the point you were bringing up of that they're writing to you now, that they're seeing what you can do and what you're capable of.
Yeah, it seems like that. They're giving me a lot. They've the reward for last season, they're giving me a lot to do this season and really challenging stuff. And the interesting thing is one of the challenges is to not get comfortable with, to keep moving to him and not bring him to me, not sort of relax it, because it can very easily get comfortable with, a place. I've been doing this for a long time, and, I have to remember that I'm Bill, but finding those parts, but what Philip says is absolutely right. Finding the parts that are me. Yeah. And that I'm not that comfortable with, but yeah.
So we've got to wrap up, but can you give us a little bit of scoop about season 2? What's in store?
Well, I'll give you the best scoop. My love interest this season is an actress named, and this is all over the internet today, named Cheryl Lee Ralph.
We heard that.
Oh, is she great? If you don't know, she the original Dream Girl. She's Madame Miserable, whatever her name is, in Wicked now, and she is just so. I just met her last week, and we had such a great time together, and the relationship is hilarious. It really is they've created a great thing, and you'll see.
That way gets you back to the church, her?
It's funny. She's very involved with the church, but no, I don't go back to the church. In fact, that's a great, Remy goes back to church and wants to know why we stopped going back to church. And because when Tig was
Don't tell.
oh, I'm not telling. All right.
Come on.
Why? Isn't that a pitch that just gets them to watch it? What? Oh, I shouldn't give it. All right.
get it out of him.
Watch. You'll see why I don't go to church.
Fine.
Oh, I'm working for Sharon Ralph and you.
Cheryl Lee Ralph and me, we're made for each other, I gotta say. She is so great. But
There's your soundbite.
How much of this was shot in Mississippi, or?
it was shot in Los Angeles, a great deal of it, inside, all the interiors. The exteriors that season, because of tax problems in Louisiana, the pilot was shot in Mississippi, and the pilot was shot in New Orleans and Mississippi, and on location. The season was shot at Sunset Gower and in Galveston, which is also Gulf Coast, very similar, but it was 115 degrees and miserable. Anyway, this season, New Orleans. We're interiors here, but we're going back to Mississippi. There things happen in New Orleans, but also in Mississippi.
What part of Mississippi?
Well, Gulf Coast. It's actually called Port Christian, which is Beale Bay, St. Louis, which is a made-up place.
I lived in Picayune for about 3 months.
Yeah, But that's the Gulf Coast of Mississippi is very different from what.
It's only about a
Yeah, no, it's like 40-minute drive. It's very easy to get to Mississippi, and it's not the Mississippi that you think of when you think of Mississippi.
There's only one Mississippi. Sorry, I was trying to think of a note to end on. There we go. I got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, John. You were fantastic.